So today I am going to talk to you about, Danielle talked to me about really just kind of giving you an overview of developmental disabilities. And then kind of how, with that, with aging. So what I like to call the life course. So really just kind of understanding what developmental disabilities are, and then kind of as we age with those different factors, things that, for the individuals with what we call developmental disabilities, or DD. It's just, so that way I'm not saying developmental disabilities repeatedly, we will shorten that to DD right now. Yeah, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. There's a lot of writing on these because I will use this in other, at other venues. So just so you know, I promise you, I won't stand here and read every single line, for you. So if you have questions, I do a lot better with interaction too of the questions, so feel free to ask any question that you have. So, so we're gonna get started with really just kind of understanding. Oh, yeah, it's right. Now is it gonna let me? Yay, it did. Okay. So what is a developmental disability? Not sure. I know some in the room definitely are very aware of what a developmental disability is. Others might not be. So really, it's a group of conditions that is characterized by an impairment. So either to a physical, a cognitive, language, or a behavioral functioning system within the body, and it also lasts over the life course. So, so some examples would be an intellectual disability. So something where we can have like a mild or moderate cognition impairment, a Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, autism spectrum disorder, which is kind of the up and coming. It's really the fastest growing right now. When we talk about individuals with DD that are being diagnosed, 1 in 35 individuals are being diagnosed with autism. And then attention deficit disorder. There are others. There's a lot of, different categories of disabilities, but those are kind of some of the ones that I think people might be more familiar with in hearing. So, okay. So I thought, because we're at the Wood County Senior Center, I just wanted to give a little brief overview of kind of the history of developmental disabilities in Wood County. Figure it'd be a little bit more pertinent to us. So, Wood County, we're very, very blessed in Wood County. There are not a lot of counties in the state that are as, I would say, forward thinking, and the advocacy that we have. And that really was a grassroots effort started in 1955, and it was started really with families. Families, there was also a pastor that they really kind of got together and said, how can we help the children in Wood County with developmental disabilities, and ensuring that they are actually, that they're getting the services that they need. So with that, there was a Wood Lane School started at the Old Ridge Elementary, and started with 11 students. There were teachers, Troas Dunn and Gladys Schultz, that started that. And over time it grew, their classroom space grew. They were at South Main, they were at the Old Portage School. And then over time, as they're kind of getting all these little outposts, they said, okay, we need to work on building the school. So the county board of DD services are on Gypsy Lane Road. And so in 1972, that was where the school was built and still is. To back up a little, in 1967, the county board of DD was formed, and those were formed all over the state in every county. So that was a Senate bill that was passed that said, hey, we want advocacy for individuals with developmental disabilities. And a couple other things, we had the Wood Lane Industries, and we used to have what we would call a sheltered workshop. So Wood Lane Industries, that building is still out on that campus, although it's changed, and I'll kind of touch on that a little. And then in 1979 is when the first residential homes opened in Wood County, and those are at Portage, they're still at Portage, and those currently are our own. So Wood Lane Residential Services, or WLRS. So that's me. That's what it's now privatized from the county. So, but we own those residential homes, and we actually have 35 total that we own. So, and then in 1994, we began with transportation. So those just kind of show you the different services that just in that time frame, of 40 years, how much that has grown they said we are very, very, very blessed in Wood County to have a lot of support from the community. Through the county is funded from levy dollars. Providers are funded from Medicaid. So we'll kind of touch on that a little bit. I know for you guys, that's the stuff that I eat, sleep, and breathe every single day. For everyone else, they're kind of like, okay, that's great. So when you're diagnosed with DD, how are you eligible to receive services? So if you know someone that has a developmental disability, then okay, what's your next step? What do you do? So there's 2 criteria that you need to meet. And the first is that you have to have by age 22, that developmental disability should have manifested. The difference when we say manifested is versus diagnosed is for the longest time, it's been, oh, you were not diagnosed by age 22, we can't help you. It also now, when you talk about it being manifested, it could be that maybe all along you have had, it's been recognized. It wasn't, you weren't, kind of, and I hate to say labeled, but given, that specific diagnosis, but it's known by, just certain characteristics or things that you've had you've had this by age 22, you still would be eligible at that point. So it's a little different from saying being diagnosed. There are other circumstances. So if someone has a traumatic brain injury, if they, sadly were in an accident in their teens, because that's before age 22, and that would be considered also, within that time frame for a developmental disability. And also it's looking to say that is that condition going to last throughout the life course? So if this is something that it's, we hate to say curable, because I don't look at a developmental disability as a disease, but it's not something, there are things that we do for quality of life, but you're still going to always have that. That's what they look at, is saying that, oh, this isn't an acute or just, it's more of a chronic. But I hate to say chronic too, because it always sounds bad when you say chronic. So acute, which it sounds cute, but it's cute. It's just there and then it goes away. The other part is you have to meet eligibility criteria. So the county board would do an actual assessment. Those 2 things then would be what would actually allow for you to receive services within the county.
I have a question.
Yes.
So if you're in an auto accident and you become incapacitated and you're not eligible.
It would depend on the age. It would depend.
And that's say like after 22.
Yeah, that is
out of luck.
That's the part that's very frustrating, and it's not so much with the system. There are other systems that would be, other avenues through the state that would be able to hopefully help with that. But yeah, to receive DD services and supports, no. But that's where, on an advocacy, when it comes to the state with Medicaid, trying to, I hate, there's kind of this loop of, just kind of just this like a little abyss of, if someone's 28 years old and they get in a car accident and then they have a traumatic brain injury, well, then what? So there are other services that can be provided through other avenues within the state. From other social service agencies, usually that would be something where it would be working with Job and Family Services and trying to get services that way. Yeah, I know I've had cases like that where people ask me and I feel horrible, but there's, at that point, there's not, I could send them to the county board and have them do the assessment, but they're not going to meet the qualifications. So, and generally right now, most people that we see coming through kind of that county system are being diagnosed very early on. And a lot of those are when it comes to autism spectrum disorders. Those are probably your major ones. And you'll see, I gave just kind of some graphs so you could see, and it's when you see it, and I'm visual. I'm a very visual person. So, words are great. She's talking about that. Picture books are good. But yeah, when you see kind of, you look at the numbers, but when you see it in a like a pie chart or something, you're like, oh my gosh, that's like, those numbers are really, really growing. So, so again, what are the services and supports? So really with services and supports, it's individualized. So everybody, it's based on, those assessments. What do you need? And I love that about it. It's person-centered. So it's not this, oh gosh, you fall into this group or this group or this group. It really truly is saying, where do you fall within that need spectrum? And what can we, what can we do to provide services for you? So the services are funded, like I said, Medicaid, in two categories. And when we say funded by Medicaid in two categories, generally it's for providers. And we'll kind of talk on that. You basically, when you get services, you're eligible for what's called a waiver of services. And there's a couple different options of those. Or if your needs are a little bit higher, especially behavioral needs, or if their medical needs are higher, it would be an ICF, an intermediate care facility. My former life, I was a nursing home administrator for 20 years. So I spent 20 years in long-term care. So the ICF to me, in operational standpoints and eligibility, is very, very, very similar. But it's not, it's similar in how it's run, and kind of, it's something that we actually look with individuals that have DD that might be in the nursing home. If we can have them in the ICF, and the state tries that too, wants to do that too. And honestly, I mean, I advocate for both, and I agree. I think that having someone, as long as their physical needs can be met in an ICF, I think it's better for them to be in the ICF versus the nursing home. But I also have had residents that have moved to the nursing home because they want to, and I think that's great. I mean, it should be really their choice at that point. So, waiver services, the one thing, the county board will coordinate those, but the state came in and said, it's kind of that separation of, you can coordinate, but you can't provide. Hence, that's why privatization happens. So that's why, like, the county no longer provides residential services, or they don't provide the day programming or employment services. They can coordinate all the services, but they can't. It's kind of, does any accounting people, anyone who knows accounting and all that? So it's kind of like, it's kind of like if you're having someone double check your stuff, in a sense. So it's kind of like the county's coordinating, but if not, it's kind of like, oh, I'm gonna take this check and I'm gonna deposit it, I'm gonna do all these things. And it's like, nobody's kind of double checking all that. That's kind of how I look at it. It's saying, okay, you've got one entity that's coordinating it, you've got one entity that's providing it. So a little bit of that, and that way the advocacy is on two agencies, which is awesome. Sometimes even more, because you can free provider of choice, so you can have other agencies that give you, that do that. So ICF's a little different. ICF facilities are actually coordinated by the ICF provider, just because of the way that those are run and structured. So they run a little bit differently than do the waiver services. And there's not as many. I mean, there are a lot of ICFs, but when you look at the vast majority of services, they're waiver services. I mean, we have a lot of ICF, what we call beds in Ohio, but generally the people that are coming up and getting services usually start with waiver, unless their needs are so. There are some great homes in the Toledo area that are actually more children's homes. Yes, Mom. This is my mother, by the way, everyone. This is Judy. Yes. Teacher's pet. No.
I know, I remember you interrupted me and now I
I'm
get.
sorry.
No, what does waiver mean?
So a waiver, really, honestly, it's just a, I hate waiver too. Some of our terminology of things is just, it's basically, it's a waiver. You're given like an individual option waiver, meaning the things, and I don't know what, I was kind of like, what are we waiving, but it's really just so that it's kind of saying, hey, you qualify. So for all of these things. So it's just, it's kind of your golden ticket when you go through the assessment, and it's like, congratulations, here's your waiver. Kind of like, it's kind of like your pass. Yeah, it's your pass. It's kind of like okay, this is identifying me as, okay, I can receive these services. Yes. So, or it's the same with, like, if you're in an ICF, you qualify for services, but you wouldn't have a waiver. Because it's two different funding mechanisms. That's where it gets into the fun stuff that I do. It's two different funding mechanisms. It's two different, they don't play well sometimes in the sandbox with that. So we just, you have to, it's making sure that the right person is getting the right services from the right entity. So, yes.
So the ICF would supply the services that typically you would be picking under a waiver system, but in an ICF system,
Yes,
they're already included in that.
yes.
Okay,
I look at an ICF as your all-inclusive resort.
there you go.
Exactly. That's really it. And then you're going à la carte on, you know,
On the waiver.
on the
system.
waiver side.
Okay.
You might, you know, your hotel room might be, your hotel room's included. Sometimes you might get, breakfast. No, but I mean, yeah, it's like, but there are other things. So exactly. So it's looking to see what are those services. We still have to provide and do provide those services for people in the ICF. But again, it's that all-inclusive. That's the perfect way of saying it. Yes.
So what's an example of an ICF in our neighborhood?
In your neighborhood, so I'm glad you asked, I can tell you. So we have 8 ICFs in Wood County. 7 of them are WLRS, and then one Sunshine has one in Walbridge. Across from the park, there is the Bear Home. That is an ICF on Klotz Road, right beside the CRC. There are 2 buildings. Just so there's like the Heritage, and then there's CRC, and then there's 2 buildings. That's the Dunn and Schultz, named after Trost Dunn and Gladys Schultz. And then we have 3 ICFs, the one in Portage that were from 1979 that were built. So those 3 are down there, and then there's another ICF in Walbridge. So that's what the ICF basically, in a nutshell, it is. For us, our ICFs can house 8 individuals in each home. Some ICFs are larger. The state really is trying to have those downsized, but you can have some that are 16 or larger. They kind of break them into like, do you have, 4 to 6? Do you have 7 to 8? Or are you 9 or larger is kind of how the state looks at categorizing those. Yes.
Is the ICF, is that the group home then? Is that what they do?
Well, yes and no. So if you say now a group home, you're stealing my slides. No, I'm kidding. So the group home that's where we get into what we call more of like a residential home. So those could be anywhere. So residential homes, so right now we have the 7 ICFs, and then we provide services in 10 of our residential homes that we own. Others, we have other homes that we own, they have other providers. So, they can be, they can be on Hillcrest, they could be on, Worcester, they could be, it's a single family home. It's a single family home that will house anywhere. I say 1 to 4 because there are some providers that provide care for 1 person in 1 home. Generally for us, we provide services really for anyone like 3 to 4 individuals within a home. You don't go over 4. 4 is the max of what you can have in a residential home. But really it's all of those ways you're providing in they're called a group home. I think that term can honestly be used for almost anything. Like some people would call an ICF a group home.
It's got special services.
I'm sorry.
The ICF has special services.
So the biggest difference, other than the fact that the size that you can have 8 versus 4, the biggest difference in an ICF, you're going to have an awake staff 24/7. Because the needs are higher generally in the ICF. So you might have people who just need assistance with repositioning at night, or based on their medications that maybe they need. I have down in Portage someone who their tube feeding is run at night. So we make sure that the staff are trained. Yeah, maybe they started at 9 and then they stop it at 5 a.m. But we always make sure. My thing too is that if you're requiring that level of care, you need to have 24/7 staff that are awake. In the residential homes that we have what I would call 24-hour, the ability for 24-hour services, but this is where it's great for college students. College students love this because we have what we call on-site on-call staff. So for 8 hours at night, it's a sleep shift. You get paid to sleep. Oh, no, sleep. Like, But it's, now, there's always that chance that, you know, if something happened, you're there just in case. You are on site on call. So you can sleep. I always tell people, I'm like, you can sleep, you can stay up all night and study, whatever, you know, I've had staff that I'm like, don't bake cookies olfactory, you know, people are gonna be, I mean, I do have some awake staff that, I love them, they'll go in and be like, okay, no more cheesecakes. I mean, I love them. But everyone's coming up, all of a sudden everybody's weight's coming up, diabetes is through the roof, and like, you know, A1Cs are going off the chart, and like, Daddy, you gotta quit doing the cheesecakes at night. But, so that's, I think that the biggest difference is gonna be the level of care within the homes. Now, you can have in the residential homes, to make this even more fun and confusing, you can have a higher level of care in a residential home. There was a push probably 6-7 years ago, not to close ICS, but to really say, hey, let's get people waivers and get them in residential homes. The problem with that, not that I don't advocate for everyone, you know, where they want to, but sometimes there could be some staff that if you're in a waiver setting like that, you might need behaviorally, you might need 2 staff for 1 resident, where when you're in an ICF, that staff's already there. So, I kept looking and going, okay, to me, that's some simple math on the state side. Well, why would you do that? Because it's gonna cost them more to do that, and that it's a higher risk for everybody. But some people I advocate for saying they do need their own space. I mean, I have some, you know, you're living with 8 other people. Now, most have their own room. Some of the older homes, like the Portage homes, there are a couple that do share because they were built in 1979. The thinking wasn't, you know, at that point, everyone was just happy to say, oh my gosh, we have this place that we, you know, to be able to, you know, help people. So, and we have some residents still that have been there since 1979. So it's amazing. It's amazing for me. I've been with WLRS for 10 years. So it's amazing for me to hear how individuals might have been in like 1979, you know, and how I see them now. And I'm like, no, really? Like, so, you're like, oh yeah. But yes,
There's a facility at Poe and Brim.
yes.
What does that mean?
So that's my baby. So that actually was a former nursing home. And that is right now, everyone cross their fingers. I'm waiting to see a very large grant if we're able to finally move forward with the renovations. And what that will be is expanding what we call our adult day services and our employment vocational. So right now we have an adult day program. It's called Positive Community Connections, PCC. The other thing, anyone in medical or anything knows, there's an acronym for everything. There are pages of acronyms, and I'm like, and none of them, you know, match anything else. So it's just, you know, you might be saying AAA for something and someone's thinking that's a, you know, a heart surgery, someone else is like trying to tow a car, you know, for us, who knows what we're doing acuity, but, so what that is adult day programming is some individuals during the day go to work. Others that aren't going to work, it's to make sure that they have something fulfilling for their day. So that's what day programming is. So right now we do utilize part of the building for that, but it's an old nursing home. I know it kind of well because it used to be the nursing home that I had. So when they actually asked me, they're like, do you want this? Would you want the building? I'm like, no, I know that building. And no, I don't want that building. I know every headache of that building. And then I'm like, yes, I do want that building because there's so much potential with that building. And there's so much that we can integrate in with the community. So that building, when it is renovated, it will have kind of this appeal of you walk in and there'll be a hallway that will kind of mimic what Main Street is in BG. And you'll have an art studio. You'll have, you know, an area for music. And I am a dog lover. My dog Walter goes to work with me every day. And so there's going to be a pet area, but it's up for really kind of more of that interaction of pet therapy. So there's always a method. I always tell everyone there's a method to the madness of There'll be a salon, there'll be a banking area where, we will have different area banks be able to come in and help individuals with money management. But also it'll be something great for the community, for people being able to come in, and I think of, people like Tom Headley, or if anyone knows Tom, the band director, to be able to come into the music area if he wants to, and volunteer and can show people, different, musical instruments. People can come in, we'll have a cafe, we'll be teaching, so we're gonna be teaching skills with the cafe, working and partnering with local. So it'll be, we'll go, and what we'll do though is we'll go in the morning, we'll take individuals, they'll pick up an air pot of coffee from either Big B or today's Panera Day, today's Juniper Day, Grounds Day, and then they'll take it back, and then working with people just on the serving skills, customer service, our, what we call our soft skills of, just, the pleases, the thank yous, that, but also, some will exchanging money. And so there's a lot of different, what we would call the vocational skills, the potential for employment skills, but also anybody from the community can come in. So, so I'm really, really excited for this. We want to also have an event center. That was actually one of the first things we wanted to do, was renovate the whole dining room, make an event center. But when I had to sit back and, you look at over the years of how, from the time we purchased it in 21 to now, the construction costs, as everyone knows, every cost, is gone up, but it's so much. I was like, okay, what's the biggest impact? What's our mission? Our mission is more right now, hey, let's do the other part first, then we can do the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. But this, because our numbers are so, our day services were maxed at what we can take in that area. And we're using other buildings right now to utilize, to be able to have, it's a little bit more, I told my board, I'm giving you for day hab probably the most non-financial savvy model, which is what your board wants to hear their CEO say. Hey, how can we, but because it's person-centered. So if I know I need to staff with this individual, that's what we do. We're a nonprofit. That's, so we rely on fundraising, on donors, on Medicaid, but if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it right. And I don't believe in having, these big group settings where you have 3 staff with 36 individuals. Not happening. So, yes.
Back when that building was Blakely,
Yes.
the senior center used their pool. Is that ever gonna be refurbished? Because we sold it out all the time. It was a waiting list.
I know, as much as I know, no one, this makes me sad because I was the one who did the pool. That was I fought for that pool hard.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, from a liability standpoint, I have to build a pool in. I know. Now,
You could sell just the pool to.
a part of, I wish I could, the only one, I really went kind of around and around with it. The reason for the pool is actually in the plans. The other aspect of that building will be partnering with the Wood County Educational Services Center. They provide, what's called a PATH program for students that, maybe are struggling in their schools, and then they're coming to, they go to the PATH program. It really is helping students. They have younger students too, so they have kindergarten pretty much through age 21, which is kind of the age 22 is where the adulthood in the DD field starts. But the superintendent and I got together, we were meeting on something, and all of a sudden we both have put in for some state funding for, they were going to build a new building. We were gonna renovate this, and we looked at each other, we're like, I have 33,000 square feet. And they need a space, and we were also gonna work on transitional services for students in transitioning from school into adulthood and vocational. They already are doing that too. We're like, why don't we mesh this together? In meshing that together, that was the space that was needed for, because there are certain regulations with kindergarten rooms, and that met the criteria for the kindergarten room. So we couldn't blame the kindergartners. So I know, I feel very bad because we really did want to start that back up with the pool. my other thing with my decision was I have, and this is just one individual, you know, I know she's one individual. To get her to go to daycare can be a challenge. I've been known to be at daycare at 10 o'clock at night because she won't go home. So it just depends on the mood sometimes. But she very much loves swimming to a fault. If that pool's open, I will never get her out of it. But I have a feel, you know, I have there's some behavioral things too, safety and behavioral, but that was just one of the things that, you know, in thinking of it, I'm like, okay, that's one individual that I know of. Knowing that we're trying to expand the services, and with that liability, and then, you know, I thought of it too, and like, I know we have the Nichols pool. So for our individuals too, we have the Nichols pool to be able to utilize as, you know, within that pool. The Nichols pool is that's over at the county board. It's at Wood Lane, at their campus. So it's a zero entry pool, a little different than like the one at the nursing home. It was more water therapeutic. This one, it's still warm water, but it's designed as like that zero entry, kind of like what they have that over at, the city park with the zero entry. So it's just, it's an easier than just, you know, you're not going down a step. You're just, you know, able to gradually go in, kind of like a pond. You're just gradually going in. Except you can see the bottom, which is great. That's why, ponds are, yeah. So yeah, so I'm sorry. I know I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news about the pool.
I didn't know that you were the one that started the pool.
Yeah.
When it was built.
Mhm. Yeah, we did the renovations and we added the
Well,
therapy
yeah.
in the pool.
I gotta give a plug for my daughter, because when she took over as it was the community nursing home, per se. And when she started as director, she just transformed the place. And I would have people come up to me and say how much better it was. She made so many improvements. Oh, mother bragging.
Oh, well, thank you. No, I did, I loved, but it was, you know, I love the pool. It was a great asset. And I mean, you know, ultimately, I wish that, you know, I don't live in BG anymore, but, I wish the community center had a pool. I think it would, you know, and I know, I think everybody does.
Or the senior center.
Yes, Denise, I will, Denise and I were talking, we have the basement.
Funding.
We already got liability people. Hey, we don't have a gymnasium. That's why.
But wouldn't there be some way that, I know our instructors had to have liability insurance and that kind of thing. That wouldn't override what you have, because it was locked when we weren't there.
Right, no, and I completely understand. It, unfortunately, the other aspect with that whole liability, the world is run by insurance agencies and attorneys. And they're not, when you look at the property liability, that side of the insurance, based like the things that we do, and usually like us, nursing homes, hospitals, things, they tend to really crack down on those things. So, I mean, I would love to be able to keep it. The biggest downfall with that corner is we're landlocked. So, you know, and I building up is not an option. So, it would be in landlocked, I had to look at, okay, how can what space can I utilize? Because new construction, which is why I didn't do the event center, was going to be so much more than the renovation. You know, I mean, we're talking over $100 a square foot when you know, a lot of that much space and you're trying to do something, it's pricey. So that was why, there were a lot of, I mean, there were a lot of people that wanted me to say, you know, can the pool right away. And I'm like, nope, wouldn't do it. And then, you know, started thinking of these different things, but when the opportunity came to be able to collaborate, that collaboration honestly is what we're really hoping is gonna get that funding to even get this going. Cause that's a bit, that's why it's still, you know, we're not able to do stuff. It's the funding. It's just not having that. Jim, I'm sorry. Yes.
Well, if the pool sits empty, or if there's still water in it and nobody uses it, doesn't the pool then kind of deteriorate
I
and?
mean, that pool's 20 years old, so there's no water in
Oh,
it, but yeah, it would have, I mean, it was one of those things I was gonna have to, you know, we would have painted and had to, you know, do a bunch of, you know, there would have been some upkeep with it, just like with any pool. But it was more of, you know, when we looked at the space and looked at that liability, it's, that was really where that decision came in. You know, but I look at it this way, the architects love me because I change plans all the time, and then they just are like, oh, we'll do this, and then they send the bill. So they love me because I change things all the time. But, you know, that's the plan as of right now. You know, but this is all dependent on too, if the state capital, funding goes through. So that's kind of where that's at. Yes.
Another question, along the line of pool,
Mhm.
because people have always been talking about that pool over there. And the facility that's over at Wood Lane, we as community people can use that. Has there ever, you have a frown on your.
Oh, no, I don't, no, I'm like, oh, okay, that's good, that's something I don't know, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, well, every once in a while, we've used it before,
Mhm.
okay. Would there be any way that the senior center and the pool over there could coordinate a specific time frame that we could have? That way we'd be able to have larger groups.
Mhm.
Um,
The thing is, I'm completely separate from the county board. So that's, so I mean, you could definitely give them a call and see if they would. So like the county, even though the county board is like, I looked at our relationship, we're like, I'm trying to decide if we're like brother, sister, or we're cousins. We're related in a sense, but we're not one entity. So what we do is completely separate than what the county board does. We did, we used to be, but then it was, you know, it had to privatize. So, but no, I would just say, I would give them a call and definitely talk with them, and see if that's yeah, Joe, I don't know, do you know anyone?
They can't find lifeguards.
Yes.
It's closed for the Wood Lane people, they just.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
could get lifeguards to be open. a lot
Yes,
more.
it would. So we do have individuals like in day programming that will go over. And to be honest, I'd have to ask the director at our day programming if it's more because we're in with them and then, or if they're having, you know, so we're considered, because some of the staff had gone through lifeguard training years ago when we were combined. So, or if they have the lifeguard at that time. So that would be the biggest thing. My gut says they would have to, I really don't know, because we used to provide the lifeguard. I mean, our staff would do it. But I think it was just different then. I would think that you'd have to actually have the lifeguard from the county board from a liability standpoint.
Yes. Yes.
I would feel that way if it were here. I would be like, if someone says, oh, I'll bring my own lifeguard, well, it's great, but it would really have to be ours. So I think just our staff are in with them, but they probably have the lifeguard there. I mean, it used to be a little different, but again, like I said, that relationship just legally is changed more than anything.
when we were at Lakely, we had our own lifeguard who was paid through our senior center. And
You didn't have to have a lifeguard there. You didn't have to have one there. I mean, we didn't have to.
you didn't have
Mhm.
one, we did. I mean,
Yeah.
we, as the senior center to cover us, we were.
Right, exactly. I think it's just a difference in, there's county government, there's private,
Sure.
so that's probably, yeah, that would have been why. So like, when you guys would have been there, I probably would have been the one who had said, yeah, bring your own lifeguard, just because at that point, if we had our therapists were already, when they had people in for therapy,
Mhm.
they had that training. So that liability was covered at that point. So that's, yeah. That's for that stuff, but So, yeah, so I'm sorry about the pool.
We're gonna need a second class.
I know, we're gonna need a pool class, so.
We ever got to the.
Well, we kind of really, honestly, we really taught, that's the nice thing when people start asking questions too, is that because then we go through and we kind of cover stuff, so. We've covered, we covered this, there's a couple others that we don't, that are more minimal, there's drop-in services, drop-in are the kind of, they're basically like mini group home services, so what we call home and personal care, you can get that in. So if you have a child living with you, you can get those services with them coming in. If you live in an apartment, but you need very much, maybe you need someone to help you with grocery shopping and to go to the bank, you can get those services. Or even what we call on behalf of, it could be that, if I'm at Dayhab, my staff can come in and go to the store on behalf of me because, it's kind of, really, it's kind of like having my own personal shopper at that point. I'm like, great, let's do this. And then there's respite care. There is a respite facility out at Portage. It's a separate building. It's owned by the county board and it's staffed by another agency, but those are designed for if you are the primary caregiver for a loved one. And you're needing kind of, again, that respite, you're gonna be on vacation or something, you can utilize that. So these are the fun little graphs that I wanted to show you. So this is just kind of shows you by life stage. And when I say life stage, I just really talk about age demographics. So in the state of Ohio, it shows you over 105,000 individuals are served in the state of Ohio. So when you look at the numbers of like with the aging, this is the part that's kind of staggering. You can see that, you have your 22 to 64 and 65, but the majority of your individuals being served are 21 and under. So this one just kind of shows within Northwest Ohio. So I took Wood County, and then one of the things I always have to do too is look at the adjacent counties. Because we're so rural and a lot of these counties, even in Lucas County, you've got Toledo, but outside of that, it's rural. And so Northwest Ohio is a very rural area. So that's one of the other things that we all look at is, you have people, if I have somebody who is just over into the Hancock County line with the North Baltimore address, they're in Hancock County, but they may want services here. They may, so those are things that we look at. Right now, the only thing that we really kind of cross on that with county lines is that we would provide transportation to employment, or sometimes to day services if there's some like in another county. But other than that, we really we have one individual that goes to, I think, Lucas County. And then in Walbridge, they're close to, Lucas, they're close to Ottawa, Sandusky up there, so. This is Wood County, so just, so in Wood County, we serve 1,327 individuals, but again, when you look at, this is the blue, 0 to 17, 18 to 21. This is everybody else's, so 518 are 22 and above. Your vast majority, though, are the ones that are coming up, that'll be becoming adults.
Why is the group that's in between those, why is that so small?
They just broke it into 18 to 21. 18 to 21 is kind of, a lot of times too, you can look at 0 to 17 if that's kind of your transition age. 18 to 21, it's really 14 to 21, but the state broke it up this way and did the demographic that way, but it kind of just, so like, yeah, 17, in that one, they'd have 17 to 21. So they try to say like more of your school age, your transition, and then your adults. So, and then this was just living arrangement, to kind of show where everyone in Wood County is living. So for me, this is very interesting because what I see is I have over 1,000 individuals in Wood County that are living with families. So when we look at aging, what happens when caregivers are aging, and then that's the 1,000 people that are going to need placement. So yeah, 53 individuals in ICF, 104 in, when they say congregate, we're looking at, those are the residential homes, or sometimes we, we have one apartment building that is, it's it's a dedicated apartment building for individuals with DD. And so there are 16 individuals there. Shared living is a little more up and coming. So if I had a child with a developmental disorder, I could become an Ohio shared living provider. And that basically, and I think this is great for families. We have a couple of families that do this, and then they kind of partner with us as the agency. So we do like their continuing ed, we offer their continuing ed for them, we offer their billing for them. And basically what they're doing, I mean, like some might stay at home. You know, maybe we have one individual, the wife actually is working now, the husband had retired, so he's at home, and but he's the paid caregiver. So it is very nice for families. There's some, so we're seeing more of that. Which I think it's nice for people to be able to do that, and have that option to be able to, you know, because they are, I mean, that point you have, you know, it's just like any, if you didn't, if you know, you make that decision that, okay, well, I'm gonna work and someone's gonna stay at home with the kids. It's that kind of thing, but this is allowing them to get the benefit of, you know, they're providing that care. So if they're providing that care, then they can get reimbursed for that. So just with aging and life course, obviously I talked about healthy aging. Life course, when I say that, life course is basically just kind of, it's kind of simplistic of that course you take along life, your lifespan. There's different, what we call trajectories of the kind of those pivotal moments in life. So when you graduate, when you get married, what, you know, all these, you know, buy your first house, those are different trajectories. But life course perspective, it looks at more of like, okay, but how do things like the environment, how does healthcare, how do your own personal choices, how do those influence your, you know, your life course and shape that along the aging process? So a lot of these are, you know, these are challenges just in aging, but when we specifically look at DD, these are some of the more chronic like health conditions, cardiovascular diseases, obesity, diabetes. I would tell you those are our top three. Epilepsy, yes, condition. I don't see a lot of complications so much with that. Usually when someone is diagnosed with epilepsy, it's medication management. So if we start to run into anything, it's more of, it's usually because there's something with those others that's going on that's then maybe triggering things, some GI conditions or those comorbidities. You're going to see a lot of comorbidities of these different conditions and others, but you know, kidney disease, you know, a lot of this, I mean, really, we're all universal in that sense. With the aging process, we're all susceptible to all these things. So, so you will see those. Other challenges would be really just the accessibility of things, of housing, of safe, you know, housing, affordable housing, making sure you get proper nutrition, making sure that you have transportation is a huge thing for, again, Wood County, because we're very rural. We don't have, you know, we don't have very elaborate transportation systems around here. I mean, you know.
Same with the senior center.
Exactly. No, it's everywhere. I mean, it really is. It's something that for the last 30 years, that's what I've heard being discussed, is how, you know, transportation and the need for it. And we're not big enough to have, you know, like in Atlanta, we have MARTA. We don't have MARTA here. I mean, which we did. We had like that like little train that would go from like Findlay all the way up to, you know, that thing. We don't have those things. So life course plan. So the state of Ohio, they have the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, and they are kind of they're like our boss in that sense. They kind of define all the rules. But one thing that they did, I thought this was really cool. I used to teach at the university a little, and I would teach on life course because I kind of nerd out and I think it's fun. But they found this life course plan that actually was kind of designed for individuals with DD. And it focused on these different domains in life that we all do the same thing, but it's like, okay, you know, how do we look at these different life stages? And then they took it across that life course. So it's like, it's kind of a guidebook for everybody of, you know, basically like the questions to ask, the things to, okay, what should we look at when we're aging? So they took these 6. And this is kind of how they broke it down, like, you know, asking like daily life, your routines, your communication, your housing, adaptations that would be needed, your access, emergencies, legal issues. So they really kind of broke all of that down. And these are tools that can be used obviously for providers, but they also are tools that are used for families. They have a lot of tools for families to be able to use. We get families that, I remember having somebody, who he admitted, he was in his late 50s, mom was in her, she was almost 90. And, but that was the first time he really had been, again, this would be someone who, he was eligible for services, never really utilized them because he was at home, never had to really utilize them. But his disorder manifested early on. So he was able to come in, but those were the questions and the things that we started looking at, and they weren't, it was really making a lot of those decisions and choices my heart broke for her because that was hard. You're almost 90 years old and you've taken care of your son your entire life. I mean, let's say he was 7, I can't remember, but so that's hard. And, there's the trust factor, but there's also, she knew she herself was needing more assistance with her own personal care. And it was getting harder for her to do that on a full-time basis with her son.
So what could she do then?
I'm sorry.
What were her options?
Oh, really? It's basically at that point, it was kind of, she had, you still, when you qualify for services, you'll have what we call support and service administrator at the county board level. So it was really, she had touched base with that person. She really hadn't utilized a lot. I think the only thing that was probably when he would go to day program. But other than that, it wasn't something that, there weren't any other, staff were going in, she didn't have a provider coming in the home to do, assist with any home or personal care. So really it was just like, he was kind of like, day programming / work each day and coming home. So she just, at that point it was, I'm gonna need more assistance. So that's when they go through and they look and say, okay, what are we gonna need? What legal, who's gonna be the legal guardian? Should you pass? Who, making those decisions. Do you have a trust? Do you have, and that's, I think, is that my next one? Yeah. So, so these are some of the things that I always would tell people when I worked in the nursing home. I still, and making sure that you have a designee for guardianship, that you have, somebody who can help make those medical decisions or those financial legal decisions. That's that point of contact for people. This is a big one, a stable account, or a trust. It's a lot different in a nursing home than it is when you work with individuals in with DD. So if you have in a nursing home, if you're going down that path and you're on Medicaid, it's called a spend down right away when you first go in. So you've got the home, you've got everything. I always call it my educated guess is that when you're going in the nursing home, it's usually that end of life. So they're looking at it as, hey, we're going to take all of this now, and then we're going to cover everything. When you are eligible for services and you're eligible for Medicaid at that point, if you're younger and you're getting all of those things, they're not, at that point, those things are going to be needed. A lot of times they're supplied by family. It's a lot different. Basically so Medicaid's covering stuff, but generally they don't have the house or the car or something that they're, having to spend down on. So a lot of individuals will have trusts. A lot of times family will put money in trust to say, I want to be sure that my son or daughter is taken care of. I'm not an attorney. So all I know is that, in my experience, I have found that a stable account allows people a lot more flexibility than does a trust. Either way, at the end of the day, I look at it this way. In a nursing home, when you're spending down everything. And so you get it down to a certain number, this is what you're allowed to have as an asset. Medicaid's already has all that, but then they're covering everything. Medicaid's kind of like preemptively covering everything now. So if there's a trust there at the end, or stable, they're gonna take that. But they've been covering everything for years. So at that point, it's kind of like, hey, I understand it. So sometimes families say, well, I want to put in trust and no one's going to get it. I'm like, they're going to get it. But what you do with a trust, though, is sometimes you can limit the things that the money can be used for. So my philosophy is always like, hey, if you don't want Medicaid, then, don't let the Medicaid people tell them, tell them I'm out here, the police saying, no, oh gosh, she's telling people how to evade Medicaid. I'm not. I'm just saying that if you want that money to be used for someone's care, a stable account is designed for that. It's set up like a 401k or a 529 education plan. So it's, it's deferring the tax. It also is set up, so it's actually, that account is going, it's like you're investing it. So you can get that return on investment. And then, but it's able to be used for a lot of different things that you can't always use money in a trust for. So it can be used for and again, the care, like Medicaid will have the care, but if there are other things that people want, it can pay for their rent where a trust can't. So there's a lot of things like that, like say, if someone's retiring and they've been working all of a sudden, that's a big issue. I mean, I have a gentleman who's gonna retire and one of those issues is, well, he's not gonna have his income anymore. What about his rent? Well, with a stable account, that's exactly what that's set up for. Is to say, okay, well, that can help fund his rent, so he's not gonna have to worry about that at that point. So that's, I mean, there's a lot more on that, but those are some things that I really try to help with people to say, hey, if you can do that, it's, and it doesn't affect like your Social Security or your Medicaid benefits. Every year we have to go through and recertify people with that and make sure that, there's no fraud, there's no anything going on. It's very transparent. But those things in their stable account are going to count against them. They don't with the trust either at times, but it's just, again, you have to be careful of, is it revocable, irrevocable, all those fun little terms of things that we do. So, and then we talked about the future with that. So those are just resources that, resources and references. So that is my fun presentation. So any other questions? I know it's a lot of stuff, and it's, yeah, there's a lot of stuff with it, but again, like I said, I think it's one of my big things. So it's like, if you know of anyone that does have, a family member, that they're caring for and that has a disability, and you realize that, wow, not that you want to, cry and go over and be like, hey, Judy, do you have this, right? But it's, but it's still just be like, hey, if there are questions on this, have you ever thought about, so it's like the county board obviously can answer a ton of questions, that they have all of, like I said, they've got the whole, on the DODD website, there's a whole section on that life course. There's a whole life mapping, and it does the same thing. It breaks it into life stages. It does a much better job than of like, basically, what are those actual individual questions that you would want to ask and want to be prepared for?
You might want to put the URL on, yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are very.
Danielle has this too, so if anyone, yeah. But yeah, so if there's anything that people would need, but yeah, there's the strategic plan there had that. Yes.
What's your theory on why the autism population is increasing? Is because the spectrum has extended, or what do you think?
My theory is yes, there's that DSM-5, but my theory honestly is that I just think that it's been given that name. It's been given that recognition within that diagnosis. So a DSM-5 is really, it's kind of like a diagnosis book in a sense. And they expand that out, and it lets you know for anything, for different disabilities, for anything behavioral, psychological. That's my thinking is honestly that I think there's just more of a prevalence of it being diagnosed. I think that honestly, because I look at individuals and like, how in the world are they not diagnosed with having autism? There's zero doubt in my mind.
Just bad behavior.
But they weren't at, 30, 40 years ago.
Mhm.
You didn't have, yes, exactly. You didn't have, so the things that we've learned over time, we recognize it now. Earlier, it's not that we didn't recognize it, we just can recognize it with an actual associated diagnosis.
Yeah.
So that's where I think, because that's when I look at those numbers and they're staggering, but you also add ADHD into that mix. You add, so you're adding a lot of different diagnoses that are just becoming more and more prevalent. But I don't think that they're falsifying things. I just think that they're, especially, but they're not looking at, okay, like, is it mild? Is it, it just used to be mild, moderate, severe. And it was called mild, moderate, severe cognition or mental retardation. Boom, there you go. And that was it. That was how your diagnosis is. I mean, until finally we got away from, but I still have to now look and see if anyone has mild, moderate, or severe cognition. And I'm like, why does that have to be, because you have all these other diagnoses with it, but they want, some individuals that we serve with autism are some of the smartest people wow.
But that's still included. Okay.
Yeah, it's still, and that's where you also, when you look at the people that you serve, they probably are individuals that might just need like a drop-in support because they're extremely high functioning, but because they were told they had Asperger's when they were, 3. But they're very high, I look at it and I'm like, I can name 3 staff that I know that have Asperger's, but they're extremely high functioning and they, I think that in all honesty, there's probably, all of us have a touch of something, of some type of Asperger's or some type of, if you really look at that. And it's, so I think at that point, but I don't think that they're getting more. I just think that it's the diagnoses that's, yes.
Our daughter works at Bitters with Farm.
Yeah.
And with folks with autism, and there are a lot of their staff who are as adults now being diagnosed. Autism spectrum disorder.
Yeah.
Neurodivergent.
Neurodivergent.
The umbrella now.
It is, it's huge. And I think that it's starting, that's where I say, I think that when you look at it and you break that down where.
And they don't even use the like high functioning or not, they don't even use that term, that's like old term now.
Oh, it is, yeah.
In that spectrum.
It is. The only time that we ever have to really say that stuff is on paper. And but we don't look at it. And that's really just because some of the diagnose, like the codes and different things
And it's
are
just an
up to date.
understanding, like, it's just an awareness.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I think that the more that you're immersed and surrounded and it's, you just kind of start to, you pick that up, you recognize it but you see the ability, you see you don't see things that people would label as weird or that they would label as different and it's.
We just look at it as quirky,
Yeah, but how many of us 40 years ago, 30 years ago, oh, she's just quirky, that's just her. No, but it's not a bad thing. Yeah, now it's so, at that point, my quirks would have been diagnosed as, and today they would have been diagnosed as, oh, well, she's on the spectrum.
Right.
So therefore you're eligible for services.
I was just, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's just fascinating. that's all.
Bittersweet's wonderful. I love Bittersweet. That's great.
Well, I was just diagnosed a couple months ago with ADD, but adult deficit disorder.
Yeah, you're not hyperactive.
No, there's no HD involved.
You have no H in your
No.
ADD.
No. But the guy that administered the test said I probably had it all my life.
You have. Any of us that are, myself included, it's just, it's more of that, it's that focus and that concentration and stuff, but it's, that's something that all doctors will say when they do that. They're like, you've had this all, and they say it's an adult onset, but generally it's been a part of your psyche for a very, very long time. It's just, it's manifesting itself now. But it's also because, think of it, as we get older, we're multitasking everything. When you're younger, you're dependent on other people for things that now when you have this independence and you're having to do all of these things and you've got a million tabs in your brain open, it can be overwhelming and
we break our brains.
you break your brain. But again, those are things that way would be, it would have been diagnosed. Now, it also means you would be eligible for the service. It doesn't mean that you would necessarily be receiving, but sometimes those services could also just be early intervention services that you're given, really more for some management of, kind of working through, with school. Because with school age kids, that's where a lot of that can come in. When you become an adult, then, you don't have to sit in a structured classroom and be told not to fidget. And that's why we have all those little poppy fidget things. It's, before, I mean, if you're in a Catholic school, none would just smack you with a ruler, and say, stop fidgeting. You were, and it not like that completely, but it was just defect. Or there was a separate classroom. So that was the thing that, we had an LD classroom then for the fidgety people. Or, so it was, and not all schools, it depends on the school. I think some schools probably were able, and some teachers probably were a lot better at managing, students. Now it's sometimes, the pendulum swings, and where we went from, a nun snacking someone to now everyone's, doing cartwheels in the back of the classroom. That's okay, Johnny has to get a set, okay. But we also have to teach them some social skills too, and some, some boundary things. So I think there's a happy medium versus him doing cartwheels and climbing up the, yeah. So I'm like, there is a happy medium, but, yeah, and that's probably like, the behaviors and stuff in school that probably happened. Yes.
In case no one's aware of it, I came across a show on Netflix called Love on the Spectrum.
Yeah.
Okay, and I've watched every episode and I just am hooked, and then I found the one from Australia, watched all of that. So it was just good to see just the incredible diversity among those people that they, shared their story with. And
Yeah.
so that was really good. And I'm laughing about being diagnosed because my daughter just diagnosed me recently. And I thought,
We do that.
no, I'm not,
We do
like
that.
my dad, we would say, oh, he's ADHD, and now my daughter says, you're just like him. I said, no. And so the other night we're watching TV and my husband's sitting perfectly still. And just the whole time I'm just drumming and tapping and fidgeting, and I'm thinking, why can't I sit still? She's right. Oh my gosh, she's right. It's me.
I always say, if those nervous fidgety things would just burn calories, I'm like, come on. Why don't we get that? We get the fidgety stuff, we get to, we're constantly moving, but there's zero metabolism going through. I'm like, come on. Give us a break. So. Well, thank you guys very much.